All right, so the Bermuda Triangle. We're going deep on this one, folks. We've got a whole stack of research here. Scientific articles, historical accounts, even some pop culture stuff.
Oh.
All about this infamous patch of ocean.
Yeah. It's funny, getting ready for this deep dive.
I know, right.
It's amazing how much of what we know about the Bermuda Triangle just doesn't hold up. When you really look at, the evidence.
Exactly. Like, you know how Lloyd's of London, they're famous for insuring anything, right?
Right. They'll insure, celebrity body parts, alien abductions.
Yeah. Well, they also insure ships. And they don't charge higher premiums for ships traveling through the Bermuda Triangle. So think about that. If it was really riskier, wouldn't they be making more money off of there?
Makes you wonder why this whole myth persists, right? I mean, it's not like these insurance companies are in on some big conspiracy to hide the truth.
Okay, so maybe insurance premiums aren't the most exciting part of the whole Bermuda Triangle mystery. People want to hear about, the disappearances, right?
Of course. And there are some intriguing cases, like the USS Cyclops, this massive Navy cargo ship. Just vanished in 1918. Yeah. Over 300 men aboard.
Wow.
No distress signals, no wreckage, gone.
That's a lot of lives lost.
Yeah.
And to have no explanation, it's no wonder this story, captured people's imaginations.
Oh, right.
Then there's Flight 19, probably the most famous Bermuda Triangle incident.
Oh, yeah.
5 Navy bombers just disappear.
Right.
During a training exercise in 1945. And then, to make it even weirder, the rescue plane sent to find them vanished too.
Like they just flew off the map, poof.
It really is strange. But it's interesting how these stories then get picked up by writers like Vincent Gaddis, who actually coined the term Bermuda Triangle back in 1964 in a magazine article, actually.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then, Charles Berlitz's 1974 bestseller, The Bermuda Triangle,
yeah,
really kind of cemented the whole myth in pop culture. He even tried to tie in the mystery of the Mary Celeste, which, if you don't know, that's a ship found totally abandoned, hundreds of miles away from the Triangle, actually. Had nothing to do with the area.
Wow.
But yeah, so you have these real disappearances, which are tragic, of course.
Yeah.
But then they fuel this whole, industry of speculation and myth-making.
Exactly. And suddenly you have theories about Atlantis, fire crystals, alien abductions, all these wild ideas, really.
Right.
With no evidence.
Okay, so before we get, too deep into the really out there stuff,
yeah,
what does science have to say?
Well, one of the most important things to understand about the Bermuda Triangle is that it's got some unique geographical and meteorological features. For example, the Gulf Stream, a super powerful current that can really change weather patterns and create really dangerous seas.
So a ship could be sailing along thinking everything's fine and bam, hit with a massive storm or currents that push them off course.
Exactly. And then there's the Agonic Line. Are you familiar with that?
Honestly.
Yeah.
I wasn't until I started researching for this. Maybe for our listeners who might not know, you can explain.
Sure. So the Agonic Line is a point on Earth's surface where magnetic north and true north are the same. But as you move away from this line, the difference between magnetic north, which is what your compass points to, and true north, like the actual North Pole, it gets bigger. And this difference is called a magnetic variation. And it can be a big deal, especially in a place like the Bermuda Triangle.
So if a ship's navigator doesn't account for that, that variation, they could end up way off course and not even realize it.
Exactly, yeah. And that can be really serious, especially if you're in an area with a lot of islands, reefs, and shallows.
Yeah, that's true. Now, that's not to say that every disappearance in the Bermuda Triangle is because of compass variations or bad weather.
Right.
But it does offer a more likely explanation than, say, a giant sea monster or a portal to another dimension.
And don't forget about road waves. These massive waves, they can just appear out of nowhere, and they can be over 100 feet tall. A rogue wave could easily take down a ship. No trace.
Okay, that's kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to see a pattern here. Powerful currents, unpredictable weather, compass variations, these rogue waves, all natural phenomena that could definitely explain at least some of these incidents in the Bermuda Triangle.
Right, and yet the myth persists. Which kind of brings us back to that human tendency, to look for patterns, to look for explanations, even when really the simplest answer is probably the right one.
Yeah, like our brains want a single answer, even if it's as crazy as time travel.
Right.
Or alien abductions.
Exactly. But the truth is the Bermuda Triangle is probably no more dangerous than any other, heavily trafficked part of the ocean. It really is, it's wild how these stories take on a life of their own.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of stories, there are some incidents that really, helped to kind of make the Bermuda Triangle so famous, like
Mhm.
the disappearance of Joshua Slocum way back in 1909.
Oh, yeah, Slocum, a legend.
Mhm.
The first person to sail solo around the world.
Right. And then, just like that,
On
gone.
a seemingly totally normal trip, too, like routine.
And even though that was long before, anyone even talked about the Bermuda Triangle, it got kind of like added to the list later, just added to the whole mystery.
Makes sense, though. Every news story makes it seem more real.
Right. Whether it fits or not, it all becomes part of the narrative. And it's not just, ships disappearing. There's even a connection to Shakespeare, The Tempest.
Oh, that's right. Some people think that the play, the shipwreck, the whole, magical island thing might have been based on a real shipwreck in Bermuda.
Whoa. It adds like another layer to the whole thing, right?
Yeah, it does.
Makes you wonder if Shakespeare himself believed in the, supernatural stuff.
Who knows? But it's interesting to think about.
It is. And it shows how these stories, even if they're based on, real events, they can change, take on a life of their own.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good reminder to, think critically about what you read.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially with something like the Bermuda Triangle, with all the hype.
Critical thinking is so important. But you know what? That doesn't mean we can't still enjoy a good mystery.
Yeah.
It's about finding the balance between enjoying the story and understanding the facts.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's okay to be fascinated by the unknown, but we can't let that blind us
Right.
to the truth.
For sure. And sometimes the truth is way more interesting than the made-up story. Like, take that study, the one by the World Wildlife Fund.
Oh, yeah.
They rank the most dangerous shipping areas in the world. And guess what?
The Bermuda Triangle wasn't even in the top 10.
Exactly. It just goes to show the reality, it's often different from what we think.
So what does all this mean for, our listener?
Well, I think it's a reminder to be careful about what we believe, even stuff that seems like, common knowledge.
Yeah, like everybody knows about the Bermuda Triangle, right? But it's a perfect example of how a myth can become so big, even if there's tons of evidence that says it's not true.
It's like that saying, don't believe everything you read. But maybe it should be, don't believe everything you read or hear.
Huh. Especially these days. With so much information out there, you really got to be careful.
Yeah, you do. So next time you hear, a spooky Bermuda Triangle story, take a second, think about the facts, do a little digging. You might be surprised what you find.
Yeah. And who knows, you might even find a new way to look at it. An old mystery, but a new perspective.
It's funny how we started talking about, scary disappearances, and now we're talking about, how to be smart about what you see online.
It's all connected, though. The Bermuda Triangle isn't just about ships and planes vanishing. It's about how we think about information, how we decide what to believe, and how sometimes the best stories, the ones that grab you, aren't always true.
Right, right. But, even after, spending all this time talking about what's probably not true about the Bermuda Triangle, I still think there's something, kind of cool about it.
Oh, for sure. The ocean's a big, mysterious place. It makes sense to feel a little, awe, even a little scared.
Yeah.
When you think about how deep it is and all the things we don't know.
And for, forever, sailors have been telling stories about weird stuff happening at sea. Storms that pop up out of nowhere, islands that disappear, lights you can't explain. It's all part of, the whole, seafaring tradition.
It really is. And those stories, they get passed down and they become part of how we see the world.
Exactly. And sure, we shouldn't believe, every crazy tale. But I think it's good to remember, there's still a lot we don't know about the ocean.
That's a good point. There's a difference between being skeptical, not just believing everything you hear and just shutting down anything that sounds, a little weird. We can think critically and still appreciate the mystery of it all.
Totally. It's like, what's that quote? The one from Carl Sagan.
Somewhere, something incredible is waiting to be known.
Yeah, that's the one. Makes you think, right? There's always more to learn, more to find out.
For sure. And the Bermuda Triangle, even with all the myths and the misinformation, it reminds us that even now, with all the information we have, there are still mysteries out there.
Big time.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with this. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and don't be afraid to, question what you think you know.
Yeah. Sometimes the coolest discoveries, they come from going off the map a little. Into the unknown.
Exactly. And until next time, keep diving deep.